What's up, guys? David DeSell, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast, and as always, joined with my co-host Landon. And what we're starting to do actually is record these intros right when we get off the main episode recording. Well, it's fresh in our mind, but dude, I don't know about you, but that was fire.
That was money. I mean, as far as like content takeaways, Terry just brought it.
Yeah, so this is part two of Terry Shanahan, the first episode. If you haven't listened to that, definitely go and listen to that. It's inspirational, it's motivational. He talks through his health scare that he had, where just I don't know about you guys listening, but for me, I think the man flu and the man cold is real, and at least for me, I'm a big baby when I'm sick. But imagine having flu-like symptoms for 8 or 9 months straight, not knowing what the hell it was,
And especially when you're
persevering.
a fitness freak, like health freak, like this dude takes his body serious. Like, so I can only imagine for him the headspace that he had to have been in, right? Like that's crazy.
100%. It's a great part one to this, and Terry reached out to us and was like, "Hey, I think we got to do another one. I think I want to be more detailed. I want to give tactical advice, which first off, we thank Terry for his time, wanting to invest more time with us, and this episode did not disappoint whatsoever. It ranged from scaling the real estate business and how he did that, hiring folks for things that he didn't like doing or wasn't good at doing. We talked about hiring virtual assistants overseas, all the way to a little teaser, but even Cialis came up in the conversation. So you got to wait till the end though to hear that part of the that part of the chat. But we were all over the place in a good way. It was still organized, and it was extremely detailed. This is certainly an episode that you do not want to miss. And I would recommend
Yeah.
even taking some notes if you can, if you're
I
driving,
was just gonna say
maybe
that. I mean, there's
voice to text or something.
so many nuggets in here that I mean, if you don't walk away trying to at least implement one or two of these things, that I think you kind of miss the boat, right? I mean, he is the definition of entrepreneurial mindset all the time, and his success is obviously a direct result of it. But it's he's got such a cool story. He's so diverse in the amount of stuff that he's done and been successful at. So yeah, you're not going to want to miss this one for sure.
I will say, if you actually pick something that is shared in this episode and implement it and do so consistently, your life, your business will change. And with that being said, change someone else's life too. Share the episode. You guys have been awesome at that so far. Our stats continue to go up, which just shows, the receptivity and how this content is resonating with folks. So please continue to do that. We appreciate that more than you know. But with that said, Landon, let's jump into the show and talk to Terry.
Absolutely.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back.
So welcome back, Terry. I know we were supposed to record last week, and let's just say you're a little under the weather from your Mexico trip, and I won't go into details, but I will say if the bathroom offered reward
Yeah.
points, perhaps you'd get a free squatty potty.
Hey, that's the truth, man. I've heard of people getting sick in Mexico, but knock on wood, it had never happened to me. And oh my God, it was rough. It was rough, but I survived. I mean, it was bad, but I survived. And it was weird though, because it actually happened a couple weeks after I got back, which I thought was strange, but my doctor's like, no, that can happen. It can take like 2 to 3 weeks for the little critters to
I think
make
you're just
themselves at
blaming
home.
it on a different country. You're not taking
Yeah.
ownership, man.
Yeah. I'm not taking ownership of my McDonald's habit. That's right.
That's funny.
Yeah, we both know that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the people I went with were like, oh, why did you get sick? You didn't eat shit. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like I'm the one guy that was careful and ate pretty clean and paid for it, but that happens.
Damn. Well, Speaking of health, I know in our first episode, which thank you again for coming back for part 2 to dig a little bit deeper and get into some detail. But in the first episode, really hit on a little bit about your story and what you've accomplished so far, the hiccup that you had for a number of months health wise, and kind of how you use that for inspiration to just really frankly knock the cover off the ball in real estate, scooping up, almost 200 doors, worth almost 30 million bucks in just 32 months. And I remember we were chatting afterwards and you were like, oh, I feel like I stayed too much in the clouds and whatnot. I wanted to get a little bit more detailed. And, with that said, had you thought about, before you actually got into real estate, had you thought about that previously, or was it something that you thought of while you were down and out as to something that you wanted to do when you felt better? Like, what was that sort of, what was the precipice of real estate? Where'd that come from?
Yeah. So I had been interested in real estate for a long time. So, my early years, the Northwestern days, and then right after, I became obsessed with like the idea of residual income or passive income. And I knew real estate was probably the most popular or most well-known of those options. And so sort of right when I left Northwestern, again, I was an intern in college, and it was right after college. I had several clients who were in real estate. So I became interested in learning more about it. One of my best friends, his dad was an old school investor. He taught me a little bit, but I was probably 24, 25, bought my first property, my first rental property. I actually bought my first rental property before I even bought a house to live in. And so I had a little bit of experience, like my early 20s, like, 24-ish is when I first, but I just I didn't really have a real mentor that knew how to teach it like a business. I didn't know about off-market deals. I didn't really know about anything. And so I eventually got my real estate license, and I kind of was looking for mentorship, was looking for an investor, somebody to work with or work for. And in that search, I just kept finding people in brokerage. And so I kind of got pushed towards the brokerage world. So for a couple of years, I was in the commercial real estate brokerage world and kind of learning the business, but it was not a passion of mine. It was not an interest of mine. And originally in my 20s, I had about six properties, maybe like 10 doors total. And then I just kind of hit a wall. The economy, took a shit in 2008, 2009. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I just ended up selling everything. I made money, but in hindsight, it's a real regret because I wish I would have just kept everything and kept going. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have a system. I didn't have a mentor, and I didn't really know what it was like to build a business. And so I did have a little bit of experience years ago, but nothing compared to what I did. And then I think really in 2019, the health scare, breakup in my personal life, those things just absolutely shook me. And it's like, all right, dude, you know what to do. Like, quit getting ready to get ready. Just take massive action. Just freaking go. And that's what I did. I just said, all right, like enough freaking podcasts, enough books, enough bullshit. Just take massive action. And, that I did.
Yeah, so, you consumed all the content and shit up to that point. So it was like, all right, you knew what you needed to do is just take the leap of faith, right? And then once you had the health scare, that would push you over the edge. Exactly. I started to see there's a time limit to this thing called life, and time is precious. Anything can happen. We're not promised tomorrow. And I just kind of got pissed at myself and was like, dude, what are you doing? Just like take massive action, just go. Nut up and go. Yep.
You had said, so I really like how you use the word residual income. I want to talk about the other word that you used, passive income. So I've heard a number of things from a number of different people where they're like, all right, it's passive income. And I think the connotation of the word passive is like, I don't do anything and I make money. And I'd be curious to know how passive real estate actually is for you, and more specifically, how passive it was in the beginning stages and how that has changed now, having acquired all those properties. Has it become more passive, less passive? Like, help to kind of dispel people's thoughts about passive income.
Right. Man, this is a great question. And you guys know this in the world of financial services. I mean, that's a true, quote unquote, passive residual income source, but somebody has to service those clients. Somebody has to deal with the bullshit. And so a couple things on this topic. I've always been about multiple streams of income. And I think for the last the last 10 years, I've had many streams of income. I had 3 years in a row where I had like 14 to 17 sources of income. Now, granted, some of those weren't huge, but some of them were. And so I would say my real estate business that I own now, in the beginning, it was not passive at all. It was extremely active. Right now, I've built a team, and over the last year, I've really focused more. I've always been focused on processes and systems, but in the last year, I've really taken a step back, and I've gone back in and said, okay, hey, if we just take my existing portfolio, almost 200 doors, and we fix that, we optimize that, that's a big deal, right? Like the increase in monthly, passive income or positive cash flow, at least, is really high if we optimize what we have versus just keep acquiring. And then behind us, we have a bunch of properties that aren't performing. So in the last year, I really focused on processes and systems. Now I have a great team, and it is pretty, if I wanted to, I could probably work 10 hours a week and keep it going, and I'd be fine. Maybe less even. If I hired an operations manager, which I'm in the process of potentially trying to find. And I had a great one for a number of years, but then Jesse, he's now running our roofing division. So if I found the right operations person, I could probably get down to 5 hours a week or less, where I just needed to meet with my key people and make decisions. But I would say this: investment real estate is not truly passive until it's big enough that you can hire the people to run it. And even if you have a property management company who's managing your properties, you still have to manage them. And I have buddies who own pretty big portfolios, and their cash flow is absolute garbage because the property management company doesn't care, and they're just doing the minimum to get by. And so they're losing their profit to the property management company. In turn, it is passive, but their amount of income they're getting is not good. And they still have to manage that company. They still have to push that company to perform. So I've had other sources of income that are way more passive. So for example, I was involved in a network marketing company I mentioned. I literally haven't done a damn thing for that company in, 7-8 years, and I still get a check every month. I have some other referral relationships with businesses that are really pretty passive. So to answer your question, I think, it's very, very hard to get truly residual passive income, but the way that I foresee it happening is eventually I'm going to have to hire the people to take me out of the business. And even at that, it's probably still going to have to be a 5 to 10 hour a week deal, at least.
And Terry, remind me, are you utilizing a property management company right now? Or are you, again, built out the team to where you're doing it yourself, correct?
We manage in-house. Yes, we manage in-house. So I use that fee, if you will, to pay my team. And we can do it cheaper than a property management. At 200 doors, we can do it cheaper than a property manager can. And my team, my key people, really my sister, who's the head of our property management, she has a pulse on what's going on, and we control the tenants we put in. We know what's going on versus for eviction processes and any damage to the property, we know right away what's happening versus waiting months or way too long. Whereas I have some buddies who have a big portfolio. You guys know who I'm talking about. You play pickleball with one of the guys. And I mean, literally they asked me, hey, what do you do for late notices? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, our property manager, somebody died in one of our properties 4 months ago. Nobody's paid rent and they haven't done anything. And I'm like, it was 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, what? I'm like, if people haven't paid by the 5th, we send notices on the 7th and we start the eviction process. And we have it's a pain in the ass, but we have a very detailed process to push people to pay. And if they don't pay, we handle it, whereas there's no property management company that's probably going to be as aggressive as we are to do something like that.
So do you have an attorney on retainer to do that stuff for you, Terry, or are you bringing somebody on internally, or what's your long-term play there?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So, a lot of the higher end attorneys don't want to deal with, low end evictions, so it's really for the attorneys, it's a super volume game. So we have all the paperwork, the notices, and like, for example, Iowa is a pain in the ass. Like their requirements for notice are just stupid. And so like we literally have to print a certain notice. It has to be worded correctly. Like if you mess up the wording, if you mess up the dates, it can be thrown out in court. So we have to post a notice on every single door in Iowa and mail certified. And those dates have to be the exact same. So the date we post has to match the certified mail. The wording has to be the same. The ledger of late fees and everything has to be correct. If it's not correct, it gets thrown out. Once we start the eviction process, then, we move it forward. We eventually get a court date. If we take any money from that client, from that tenant between then and the court date, it can get thrown out. Once we get the eviction, then usually it's a freaking another 3 weeks before we get to lock them out. We then have to take, let's just say their house is full of shit and like they're hoarders and they've collected all kinds of crap and there's animal pee and poop all over, whatever. We have to then take all their shit and put it on the curb for like 48 hours and allow them to take it. So we have to pay to move it outside. The neighbors love you for that. Yeah, the neighbors love us. So we have to pay to move it outside. And then if they don't come get it, we have to pay to have it thrown away again. So we have to pay to move it twice. And then we can change the locks and do this stuff. In Omaha, it's similar, but when you do the lockout, when they're actually evicted, they have 14 days. You have to leave their shit in the house for 14 days. I have to pay the utilities. I have to pay, not get rent for that place. And then after 14 days, then we have to pay to remove their shit. Like, and these people leave everything, right? Like, it's not like there's a few things. So it's a big disaster.
So on that note, initially it's like 200 doors worth 30 million. It sounds great. And then you share this and I'm like, man, like that sounds terrible. Screw that.
I'm beginning to think I should just sell my place and go move into one of Terry's properties.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay rent.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, you start off and it's like, this is great. And then you share that and you're like, oh, is it worth it? What like percentage of 200 doors do you actually deal with stuff like that? Because it can't be all of them. Yeah. Otherwise you wouldn't do it.
Right. So, we got into, okay, so on average, our worst month ever, I think there was like on the 5th, I think there was 43 out of 200 who hadn't paid rent yet. That was like the worst ever, right? But that's a high amount. That's over
25%.
Yeah. And so I would say on average, we're always going to have 10 to 15% who have not paid rent as of the 5th. Okay. So, there's been times where there's, $60,000 in outstanding rent. My gross profit margin's about 30%. Okay. So principal, interest, taxes, insurance, flood insurance, fixed expenses. So my gross profit on positive cash flow, however you want to word that or call that, is about 30%. So if there's a time when 25% haven't paid, I'm still about 5% positive, right? Now, that doesn't count if an AC goes out or there's a huge issue with repairs and maintenance or capital expenditures. So usually what happens is I realized that you just have to really press them and you just have to really document and you have to know the legal ramifications of things. And so what I realized is we get a ton of money in late fees, so we charge those late fees. Now, on average, I would say, if there's, let's just say there's 20 to 25, 10 to 15% who haven't paid by the 5th, generally, usually by the end of the month, there's like less than 5. So it's just a slow drip of what comes in. And then on average, we probably do about 2 evictions a month, so that means of those 5, there's maybe 2 who don't pay at all. And then we have to move forward with an eviction. But we've just become really efficient at it. And I just know it's part of the deal, right? It's part of my operating expense to handle that. So probably worse than the eviction piece is people who destroy a house. you know, you know, they leave and they don't tell you and they don't pay rent and they're not communicating and we can't legally go in for a certain amount of time. A pipe freezes and then it, you know, does a ton of damage. Now there's an insurance claim, but because I have so many houses, my deductible is $5,000. So, you know, it's give and take. So, I mean, dude, there's times, I mean, in the last year, there's probably been 10 houses, or 10 occurrences where I've had $20,000 plus of damage. You know, that's $200,000 out the door. Like,
which
boom,
is,
you know,
which is super shitty if you have one or two houses, but you have the benefit of having 200, right? So
exactly.
one eviction, you know, for someone who has a property is a huge pain in the butt and totally messes them up from a cash flow standpoint. But I think
Right.
you kind of roll with the punches when you have as many as you do, and it nets out positive when it's all said and done. It's just getting to that point, which kind of leads me to my next question. So, you know, a lot of folks, they'll scoop up who are in real estate, they'll scoop up a property or two or three a year. They kind of self-manage, they do all that stuff. You took a different approach and you scooped up almost 200 doors in less than 3 years. So I would imagine that you were super dialed in terms of systems and processes and bringing folks on board. Probably, I would imagine, for certain aspects of the team, even going offshore to mitigate expenses a little bit more. Walk us through specifically, and I'll ask some detailed follow-up questions, as I'm sure Landon will as well. But like, let's get as detailed as possible in terms of how you positioned yourself to scale that fast. Cause that's no joke, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And really quick, one quick, this is a great question. Yeah. One quick comment I forgot to mention on the last topic is that most of the houses that I bought, again, were cash out refis. We talked about that a little bit last time, but it's like where the loan that I got, even if it was 75% of the value from the bank, because I bought the house right, I fixed it up. I have in-house team. So I created a ton of value. So I almost always over the course of my 200, I've had a huge amount of cash out refi money, meaning the bank's given me more than I even have invested in the property. So I've kept that reserve account available to take care of these issues as they come. And all things considered, my portfolio is still extremely profitable. And, you know, our average cash flow per door is like around $370 per door, you know, so it all works out. But it doesn't work out if you have 5 or 10 properties, just like you guys said. So for the person listening at home who has a good income somewhere else and wants to do this, you really have to have scale, or you have to probably go with like much nicer properties where your cash flow is less, your returns are less, but the likelihood of a tenant screwing it up is less also. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there because I think it's important to note. So
that's good.
So to scale, so this was one of the things that, you know, my someday goal when I first started this, like someday, like 10, 20 years from now, if I could have 100 properties, I'd be thrilled. Because when I first started this, I mean, I was still doing a little bit of coaching. I had a few other sources of income. And, you know, I just didn't anticipate this was going to happen as fast as it did. And then once I built the in-house construction and once I started getting cash out refi money to build my team, to pay myself, then I was like, okay, I can do this faster than I thought. So with scale, and I think this is a piece of advice that I've given to so many people, and so few people do it. And so if anybody listening at home wants to do this, like, you know, I can't promise that I can sit down and talk to everybody, but I literally, if somebody does this, I would love for you to like contact me and show me what you did. And I would be happy if I can work it out to sit down with you and talk to you about it, because I've given this piece of advice to so many people. Nobody does it. It's simply make a spreadsheet of every single damn thing you do in your business. Okay. Just start making a list. To do it for a week, right? I mean, at least 3 to 5 days, but you should probably do it for at least a solid week, right? And just start making a list of every single freaking thing. Because it was just me. And then I had my guy Renee, who did like the rehabs and the turns. And then I realized, okay, we're wasting a ton of time going back and forth to properties for me to look at shit. Okay, this is stupid. We need to use the same paint, the same flooring, the same fixtures, the same lights. We need to do the same shit every time. So I said, Renee, meet me at Menards and we're going to pick out our finishes. And so we literally sat there. We made a list of all of our finishes. He has like a photographic memory. He didn't write shit down, but I wrote everything down, took pictures of it, pictures of the SKU. I had a virtual assistant create a spreadsheet of all of our finishes, every toilet, every light, every damn thing you can imagine, right? And so we know where we get it. We know the SKU. We know the price. We know everything. So now I'm not going to the damn store anymore to meet my guys to pick shit out. This is what we get, right? And I could have my virtual assistant even order it online in the shopping cart and pay for it. And then the guy just goes and picks it up. So then I started to say, God, you know, so I wrote every task, right? And I said, okay, I've got Renee, he's contract labor, but like, what are the things I can give to him? And then I like chipped off a few. Okay, Renee, I'm not going to go meet you at properties. We're going to walk through this shit one time. We're going to videotape it. I'm going to save that video unlisted on YouTube. I'm going to give it to the virtual assistant, have the virtual assistant upload it, save it. And then we know the virtual assistant's going to go through it and is going to dictate, you know, bullet point out exactly what I said in the video. I'm walking through the house. Okay, we're going to leave this room. Okay, here we're going to do new flooring. Here we're going to do new paint. Here we're going to paint the ceiling. Here we're going to do new light fixtures, blah, blah, blah. We do it one time. I'm not going back to that shit until it's done. And even then, eventually, I'm not going to go back because you're just going to send me a video showing me it's done, right? So I just started to eliminate all the crap of like going back and forth, unnecessary meetings, you know, all kinds of stuff just with checklists and with things like that. So Renee was the first guy I could hand stuff off to. And then I had a virtual assistant who was part-time in the back, who was kind of creating some of these things. Then I started to realize, man, like a thing I hate doing that I have to do every week is review invoices and write checks. Like, how can I get rid of this? You know, and now there's probably systems like online, you know, banking systems that could handle this. But my mom had just retired from her job. And I was like, Mom, can I hire you 5 hours a week to do this? And it was the best damn thing I ever did because like she has like a crazy memory. She's retired and, you know, I don't pay her a ton to do it. She oversees every invoice and writes every check that goes out of business. So boom, took that off my plate, right? But literally just started writing every single thing down. And then the second column was the category of the business. So this is accounting, this is property management, this is leasing, this is legal, this is construction, right? So it's I have the task, I have the category, and then the third column was the person, right? And then pretty soon it was just like me, Renee, my mom, and then, okay, I'm like, all right, now I need a full-time VA. Let's look at this list and let's identify all the things I can hand off to a VA. And then it's like, all right, now I need somebody here. Let's figure out, you know, and I just did that step by step by step by step. And I'm telling you, it sounds simple, but people don't do it. And it absolutely, changed my business just by that simple exercise.
So there's a lot in there that you shared that I was smirking along the way. So yeah. We help business owners with exit planning and value acceleration, trying to unlock the value in their company. And there's a few different things that we help them with. And to your point, I think we're saying the same thing, but maybe it's slightly different in that one thing that I suggest folks do, which to your point, they don't ever really do, but the ones who actually do this, even though it's tedious, it's so eye-opening, is I have them do a 15-minute tracker.
Yep.
For a full week at a minimum, which is so annoying. But the insights that you gather from where you spend your time is so helpful. The other thing is we have this energy quadrant. So it's sort of like a play off of Stephen Covey's time management quadrant. So in the top left, you have things that you love to do and that you're great at. The top right, you have things that you like to do and you're good at. The bottom left quadrant is things that you don't like to do, but you're good at. And then finally, in the bottom right quadrant is things that you don't like to do and you're bad at. So you oftentimes when you do that 15-minute tracker and you combine it with that energy audit, what we find is that you're spending a lot of your time in the bottom two quadrants where you should not be. But the reality is for someone else, be it your mom, be it a virtual assistant, be it whoever, whatever's in your bottom two quadrants may be in their top two quadrants, right? So it's finding the types of people that love doing certain things that you don't like doing, and then ultimately delegating, automating, or deleting if it's something that doesn't even need to be done. So I was just smirking because we're very, very much in alignment with methodologies, but at the beginning, you kind of have to do everything yourself. And then the last thing that we help folks with that you alluded to is essentially creating, if you are going to replace yourself, typically everything that you do is stuck up here in your head.
Right.
So you have to document, you have to create standard operating procedures, and you have to systematize your business. Otherwise, whoever you hire is going to be asking you a million questions anyways, and you're spending the same amount of time, if not more, but you're just increasing your expenses by bringing this person on. So I really like how you've walked through putting together that list, seeing where you're spending your time, seeing all the stuff you actually do, figuring out what you don't like to do, delegating that, and through that delegation process, creating standard operating procedures to ultimately empower them to actually do the job effectively.
Right.
So I think that's spot on.
I was sitting over here like a proud dad listening to you say that. Like, legit, man. I think I don't think people know how fucking good that is. Like, if you could turn the podcast off right now and walk away, go implement that right now, your life, your business, everything would be changed. Like, that is the ultimate business owner mindset, right? How do I get rid of the bullshit, streamline everything? That is so freaking good. And I hope people realize, like, exactly what David said. I mean, that's what we are trying to coach and implement for individuals all the time, right? Is, all right, if you know, person A, in your case, Renee goes down, okay, well, who's the next man up, right? Who fills whose chair if something goes wrong, somebody quits, something, whatever happens. Yep. I mean, you just, as an entrepreneur, man, you got to think, eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. And you clearly were doing that. And that's awesome. That's good shit right there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. So here's one step further. So one step further is David, the 15-minute increment thing, I've done that so many times. And that's how I originally got the list, right? Was with those 15-minute increments.
What was your 15-minute tracker looking like last week after you got back from Mexico?
15, 30, 45, 60. I was all on the same place on all of them.
It was all on repeat.
It was on repeat, and it wasn't too productive. Let me tell you. But in for real though, I mean, I've done that a million times myself. And then as we continue to progress, and even last year, 2022 and 23, I had my team do this multiple times. So I have the team do it, right? I make them send me their 15-minute. We do it for 3 days with the team. Send me their 15-minute increments listed out. Then I had my operations guy at the time assess it, and we wanted to see where's overlap, who should be doing what amongst our virtual team, especially. What can we divide and delegate, eliminate, automate, right? And so, I've done that many, many times. The saying, I don't know who said this, who to attribute the quote to, but it's like, how can I fire myself today? Right. It's like, what can I do to fire myself? And I quite honestly have gotten, I've been in just a burnout phase, over the last 3 to 6 months, where I really got back into this mindset lately, as I'm looking for an operational person. And it's like, okay, how can I then take what I have and go one step further? Like, my next thing is taking what I've built and what can we automate? Like, what can we automate? And are there things I could still take off my plate? There's just some complicated financial things. There's some complicated legal things where, I may or may not be able to outsource it. But, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about virtual assistants and how I use those. And I'm telling you, there's people in other countries that are really damn smart and that will do great work for a fraction of the price that you can get it here.
Let me ask you this. I mean, obviously in David and I's world, there's as of late, especially, a pretty good tech stack there for, people are knocking down our doors all the time with new software, stuff like that. What is
Right.
that like are you seeing that growing in the real estate business? I mean, are things getting more and more automated? Are there services out there that you can kind of unload some of this stuff to?
There are, and quite honestly, like that's part of the person I hire. Like, and I'm probably going to hire a consultant, to look at some of this stuff. And a huge part of it is going to be looking into the technology that's available. But for example, I use a property management software called Buildium. And Buildium is a professional property management software. Some of it I don't use because I own and self-manage. And so there's like some like owner reporting and tools that like we really don't need. But I mean, for example, a huge pain in the ass for us is to take any sort of check or cash payment, which I don't want because it's an admin nightmare on the back end, right? Like, so we try to get everybody set up with ACH and they can pay automatically through their bank account. They can pay automatically through credit card or debit card. And Buildium has that set up. There's another piece to this. It's been great. It's called like Pay Near Me, where there's actually a bunch of like Walmart, Casey's, random stores where the tenant can take cash and they have a barcode on their phone and the person scans it and they pay cash. They pay like a $2 or $3 fee to the store. And then we get that cash into our account. Right. But it's just like eliminating any sort of administrative BS on our end. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I think you guys probably have, just because your business is more, I don't know, it's higher end, it's a little different, but there are more and more tech options. And I think my next thing is Buildium has integrations. And so now it's like, okay, what other apps and what other technology am I not using that can integrate with Buildium?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I asked, I literally sat on a call yesterday with a new company that it's very interesting. Can't get into it too much, but essentially it's, my takeaway from it was almost like a Robin Hood for like REITs or investing in real estate, where you can, it's basically creating liquidity and being able to invest in the real estate market. Pretty interesting concept. And so I just didn't know if there was more and more stuff coming that way for, kind of the privatized real estate market or not. So be cool to see. I mean, maybe you're the one that developed some of this, technology for it, right? I mean, if you're looking for those opportunities, sometimes it takes some pain points for people to just finally say, you know what, I'm gonna go build this myself and figure it out. And then, we'll be having a conversation on a liquidity event when you cash out for a couple bill.
Hey, I'm good with that.
You and I both.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you, so one thing that we come across a lot is when we bring business owners through this exercise, one of their fears, right? So we've talked about delegating, automating, deleting or eliminating. You also mentioned earlier that you probably have gotten to a point to where you've been able to outsource so much that you're working about 10 hours a week on this specifically. And
let me be clear. I could, I'm not.
So, right. So you're still probably obsessed, right, with it. But one of the fears that we hear, and I'd be curious to know if you've dealt with this, how you work through it, is the business owner being fearful that the team members will be like, well, what does this person even do anymore? Like, we're just running the business for them. Have you had that feeling before? Have you gotten that feedback before? And if so, how have you worked through that?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked that on podcasts and by people. So for example, okay, so remind me as a follow-up to talk about my acquisition process, okay? Because this kind of goes hand in hand. But let me try to answer your question first. I've had people bring that up to me, and there was definitely a time where I was a little bit fearful, even of like handing certain stuff off my plate to somebody, because it's like, well, if I teach them how to do this, then like they could go, and it's like, you know what? Good fucking luck. Like, good fucking luck doing what myself or any big, business, somebody who's built the business, like it's freaking hard.
And if they do, it's like, word, good job.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So for example, I came to a point where two of my top 3 or 4 people, we stopped buying, right? And I had to figure out, okay, shit, am I going to lose these guys or am I going to create an opportunity for them? We decided to create, they had a background in roofing and exterior renovation. So we started a company, right? So it was like, all right, well, I'm better off if I lose them, I'm better off to have a percentage ownership in this new company and refer business then, and it's another stream of income, whatever. Well, you know, they've realized, and these guys are great and they're talented, but they realize how hard it is because all of a sudden it's a little bit harder when I'm not, you know, rainmaking for them every second of the day. And they don't just automatically have all my relationships and I'm not writing the checks and this and that. So I think that is a fear, and it certainly depends on the business, right? But I'm of the mindset, you know, I've heard the quote before, what is it? It's a Gary Keller quote, and it's basically like give somebody the opportunity to make their world so big within your world that they don't want to leave, right? So like with my sister, she's always probably going to be a great vice president or great right hand. She doesn't have the desire to start and do everything from scratch. So I have to continue to figure out incentives and ways for her to have upside. And I have, right? And therefore, even if her salary is a little lower than it could be somewhere else, if she gets some ownership in properties and she gets opportunities, she'll stick around because she's in it for the long run. So I think it's really just, that's certainly a fear, but I think it's a limiting belief because there's very few people who can truly build it from scratch and do what you know, you guys have done, other people have done. And so I think you have to stop that limiting belief, and you have to then give your key people who could maybe do it on their own, you have to give them an opportunity within your world to make it so sweet that they don't want to leave.
So before we get in,
I would confirm that is absolutely a falsity. I mean, with all the business owners we work with, we hear that all the time. And here's the deal: if you have employees for a reason, because they like the comfort of being an employee, right? If you were hiring a bunch of entrepreneurs, you wouldn't have a workforce left in 2 weeks, right? I mean, because we're the only ones dumb enough to go out and just say, yeah, we'll do it and work tireless hours and spend a bunch of capital to start things up front. There's just not a lot of people that are wired to take that kind of risk. And so I think, yeah, you're absolutely right that it's a complete falsity that, you know, your employees are going to think that way. And obviously we know, you know, the less valuable you are to your business, the more valuable your business is, right? So you should be trying to work yourself out of your own company, ideally.
Yep.
Before we get into the incentives piece of how you financially, right, incentivize them to stick around, I want to go back to close the loop around the scaling part of the conversation. So you've hired some virtual assistants, and common fears or real life experiences have been hiring someone overseas sounds good because it's cheaper, but still respectable in terms of their geographical location, right? It's not like you're taking advantage. But there's a language barrier. Potentially there's a time zone difference that may pose an issue. And they may talk a big game, and then when it comes down to it, they don't do a great job. So I guess my question would be, what roles do you have VAs, virtual assistants, running, and where are they located, and how did you find good people?
Yeah. So I would say this: I did a consulting project for a CPA firm, like a big CPA firm, like very successful CPA firm, not like a national, but like a regional. And it was hilarious talking to these guys about virtual assistants. They were just looking at me like I was fucking crazy. And I'm like, you guys are so stupid for the amount of money you're paying these young, like you could grow your business exponentially and have 10 people in India working for $5 to $10 an hour who are outperforming these guys in your business. These guys in your business should be out getting new clients, not doing the fucking work. Like, I mean, it was asinine to me. I was just like looking at these guys like, you're fucking paying people in-house to do bookkeeping? Like, what is wrong with you? You know, like, I mean, it was just this crazy realization that I had, and they could not see past it. And so here's the deal. Like, it's tough to find good VAs. Like, I get it. It's twice as hard to find a good VA as it is a local person, you know, but So for example, in the show notes, if you guys want to put this, like I shared the 2 sites that I use upwork.com and I use onlinejobs.ph. PH is Philippines, right? So if you need verbal cold calling, customer service, talking people, one of the best places in the world is the Philippines because they have a very small accent and huge companies, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, all those big companies, their call centers are in the Philippines. Okay. So the Philippines is just made up of call centers, and these people are making $2 to $4 an hour at these call centers. And so I would recruit them away to make $5 an hour, $4 to $5 an hour to start plus incentive, and let them work from home. Now, granted, if they live in the Philippines, in Manila, which is the largest city in the Philippines, they might have an hour and a half commute each way, and most of them have been robbed, held up at knife, have horrible stories. And so if you can eliminate that commuting and you can eliminate the safety issue, they will gladly work for a US based company. So the first thing is, for verbal, Philippines is great. For numbers and financial and accounting, India is the best. There is a strong accent. It's a little bit difficult to understand. I've recently partnered with a company there, so I don't use individuals there anymore. I use a company directly. They have guys on staff who've passed the US CPA exam, and they're like $10 to $15 an hour, and their bookkeeping has far exceeded. I hired a very expensive US based firm who was a fractional CFO firm, and these guys have outperformed them tenfold, and they're about a fifth of the price. So
Wow.
if anybody's looking,
have you looked at it? I mean, how does it work from like a compliance perspective when you are dealing with financials like that, Terry? I mean, is that falling on the firm level? How does that work?
So I have them do all of my bookkeeping. And I mean, they do my depreciation schedules, all my loans, all the bookkeeping, everything. And then, of course, I have a US CPA who looks at it and files the tax return, right? But I mean,
I was just thinking of it from the CPA firm you're talking about. I wonder if they may have a firewall there of client data and all that going out. Right. What does that look like? I'm wondering if I'm assuming that has been, that conversation's been had and that's been put to bed, but I didn't know if you had that conversation. Maybe that was what was holding them up.
They were nervous about that 100%. And I get it. And that's a legit concern.
I know I would be in our business.
But here's the deal. The value that you guys could add to business owners is the business owner could hire their bookkeeping overseas. You might be able to, you could literally save them $5 to $10 grand a month, maybe more, depending on how big the company is. But everybody I referred who I don't have any ownership in this, but I just think it was a huge benefit for me because I save so much and I get a good service. And you guys could save business owners easily $5 to $10 grand a month in their bookkeeping services. Now, of course, their CPA is going to need to look over that. But I'm just talking about your clients who are business owners, like their personal bookkeeping could be done. It's a little bit different for like true financial compliance, true CPAs, but there's plenty of people that could use this, So Philippines, India, and then, you've got Bangladesh and many other countries that have people, whether it's graphic design, whether it's any sort of admin. So for me personally, I use Philippines for cold calling and acquisition. I use Philippines I have 2 full-time admin people from the Philippines. I have 1 full-time admin person in Bangladesh. My bookkeeping is in India. I've used Pakistan. I've used many different countries for like projects, for like one-off projects, depending on what it is. And then for cold calling, I randomly have also used some. So for example, the very low end cold calling, hey, do you want to sell your home? And then they qualify the lead. Then they send that lead to a more qualified person who talks to them further. And I have a kid in Canada and I've had somebody in Mexico who do those, so they're a little bit higher end, qualifying the lead before it brings it to me. and my in-house acquisition guy. So I don't know if that answers your guys' question, but that's just a few of the pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you vet them? Right. Again, they may talk a big game. So how do you test them out, so to speak, or is it just trial and error until you find a good one?
Yep. So I always give them an assignment. So for example, in the job ad, I say, if you're interested in this, give me a 3 to 5 minute video or 2 to 4 minute video answering these questions, like about whatever XYZ, whatever you're hiring them for. So you want to see, did they follow directions, right? That's the first thing. If not, then throw them out. And then you get to see their personality. You get to see them on video. You hear their voice. How do they speak? Now, granted, there's a lot of the guys doing my bookkeeping. I don't really care if they have a thick accent, because 95% of our correspondence is through Excel and through email. So as long as they can do that, I'm not as worried about the oral communication, right? So always give them an initial assignment to make the next cut. And then I'll interview them, talk to them. I'll ask them some specific questions. If they're a cold caller, I'll say, hey, send me recordings of past calls of yours. I'll maybe do a role play with cold calling. I'll give them some objections, see how they handle it. If they're bookkeeping, I'll say, show me some samples of past financials you've built. You can delete any sensitive information, but like, show me some spreadsheets you built, or show me a P&L you've done. So I always give them an assignment, and then I'll usually start them part-time on a 30-day trial to see how they do. And if they perform, then we'll go to the next level. And then from there, I'll give them almost always a small base plus some incentives. And some VAs just want a small base, but I'll still give them some sort of like quarterly bonus or some sort of small incentive to keep their head in the game and keep them, wanting more.
So let's talk about incentives. So there's incentives for the overseas folks all the way to your sister, I believe you said, right? Making sure that she, continues to stick around and sees sort of the long-term vision. What are some incentives examples based on roles, right? So a salesperson incentive is going to be different than someone who's in charge of the finances.
Right.
So what are some examples of how you sweeten the deal a little bit for them?
Yeah. So for example, when I first hired, my sister left, she was with a startup company that did well, making over 6 figures, had some decent benefits, a little bit of flexibility, not a ton, but a little bit. And so with her, she actually approached me like, hey, I want to work with you. I want to learn this. And she had her real estate license in Chicago and did some brokerage work there. And her big thing was she wanted to have some ownership. And so I said, okay, my initial contract with her was for 2 years. And it was like, hey, I'm going to, her base was like a fraction of what she was making. It was like, $2,000 a month base. But I said, I'm going to show you a legit way to make 150 grand. And she did, and so then we laid it out. And then on top of that, I said, I'm going to help you in the first 2 years acquire 10 properties of your own. And so I gave her some access to off-market deals that were good deals, but I passed on. And now we just started, she's in year three or I guess we've completed 3. Anyway, she's around 3 years in, and we just started an entity that she has some ownership in. So now, as she's stuck with me and as she's done better and better. But again, so what I did is I said, okay, listen, I'm going to give anybody a small base. And then I just tried to figure out, okay, what makes me money? Well, the number one thing that makes me money is acquiring new properties. So my core team, I gave them all incentives, even though they didn't all have the same role. But like when I was really building in 2021, 22, my key 3 people, all of them got a certain incentive bonus if we acquired a new property. Even though they didn't all touch that process, I needed them to be motivated by that, right? So they got an incentive for acquiring a new property. They got an incentive for every time we completed a construction project or did a unit turn. They got an additional incentive if we got a cash out refi, meaning we got more money back from the bank than we put into the deal. They got an incentive for that. They got incentives on our occupancy rate. So our month to month, our occupancy of our units. And I just started to put together like all these things. And I realized that on the like upfront acquisition of a property, cash out refi, construction, I was willing to give probably more than they deserved for those things because it's just building my residual. It's just building my long-term value. And so if I keep all that, I'm willing to pay out a chunk up front. And that's how I structured it. It was very front loaded. But the problem was after things ran its course for 2 years and we stopped buying, I then had to be like, oh shit, now I need to redo their comp plan because they're not going to be able to make as much, and that's what we did.
I think that's a good takeaway for everybody, right? I mean, I think everybody should have performance-based incentive almost be at least half. I know a lot of people don't like it, but why not, right? Give the unlimited upside, but give somebody something to work towards. Obviously the hard part with that is you've got to create a clear vision and set of scope of what they need to be doing to hit that. But I think once you do that, then you get a lot more buy-in, right? And it's like you said, if you're playing the long game, like most business owners are, I'd be willing to give most of it away up front for the long-term haul of it for sure.
Right. Absolutely.
What about the folks overseas?
Yeah. So, most of them, and again, just to be clear, somebody's going to hear this and be like, oh my God, you're taking advantage of them or blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm paying every single one I've hired. I'm paying them more than they can make in their other job. So if I recruit them, I want to know, what have you made? What's your pay? Okay, I'll pay you more than that, but I'm going to hold you to a certain expectation. Right. And so, every single one of my virtual assistants, they've made more money with me than they've ever made in their life by far. I give them bonus for their birthday. I give them a bonus for the holidays. I give them a quarterly bonus. I give them, different bonuses for different things. And so the way that it's changed over time, but for the overseas people, they play a big role in leasing, getting leases signed, getting lease renewals, keeping tenants, doing work orders, things like that. So my core 3 virtual assistants who are like full-time admin, they're paid a certain amount of bonus for a lease renewal being signed. They're paid a certain bonus for a new lease signed. They're paid a certain bonus monthly for occupancy. If we keep our occupancy 92 and a half, our occupancy 92 and a half or better, and then at 95, 97 and a half and up, they get a higher bonus. The more full we are, the better occupancy we have. And then there's been some other things in the past that I've had bonuses. If we acquire a certain amount of properties each quarter, they get a bonus. So those are just the types of bonuses that I've given them. Now, granted, their income is lower, so it's a smaller number, but it's basically just a relative percentage of what they make.
That's a big deal to them, right?
Right.
Like, if you take somebody from 4 to 5% or $4 an hour to $5 an hour, that's a 25% increase for them. Right? That's a huge freaking deal. I'm sitting here thinking, like, as a business owner, this sounds like heaven to me, right? I mean, it's unfortunate, but unfortunately today we've got this culture of such entitlement that every college kid who graduates and thinks because they got a 4-year degree that they're entitled to make $100,000 and they have zero real world experience. And oh, by the way, they don't want to be in a role that produces any revenue, right? Right. When you've got people over there who will, you want to pay them $100,000, they put bury bodies in the dirt for you. It's like that sounds like a great thing to me. They're probably loyal as hell, just by giving them a small bonus. And here it's like, well, that's not enough. It's never enough here, but over there, that means the world to them.
Dude, 100%. I mean, like they've opened up to me and, broken down in tears. I mean, for how excited they are for an opportunity. I mean, these people do not have opportunities, and
they're like, we don't even celebrate Christmas and you just sent me a Christmas bonus.
Right. And the thing that's interesting is, my core people, Bangladesh, Philippines, they are absolutely disgusted and blown away when they look at our piece of shit tenants who take advantage of us, ruin a house, don't pay rent. When they live in the United States, they can get a fucking job to minimum wage or higher or whatever by just showing up. These people don't even have opportunity. They're begging for work. They'll do anything. right? And they're like, wait a minute, these people don't pay rent. Wait a minute, these people don't have a job. They can get one, but they don't have one. Wait a minute. Why are these organizations paying thousands of dollars for these people who are perfectly able? I mean, they're just like, what in the hell is wrong with you Americans? You know?
A lot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Not us, but our society,
Yeah.
our you know.
Yeah.
So
It's
anyway,
going the wrong direction.
100%.
Have you ever gone out there or ever planned to go out there and visit folks?
Yeah, I have. So, so originally the first time, my first kind of exposure, it was not the first time I'd worked with, I've worked with VAs probably since a long time, like 2009 or 10, maybe was the first time I started using virtual assistants. And then like 11, 12, 13, you know, I've been using virtual assistants, but in 2000, I talked about it last time. There was a company I was involved in where we taught Filipino VAs how to make outbound cold calls. And when we started that, when I got involved in that company, we went to the Philippines and met our team and sat down with them and did a workshop and everything. And it was
That's pretty
great.
cool.
Yeah. It was really cool.
You get to see what their environment's like, what they're actually like in person, and not over video or over a call or over Excel, you know, for some of the roles.
Yeah.
And again, give you some perspective on how damn good we actually have it here, right?
Dude, we're so lucky. I mean, they don't, I mean, the Philippines is very, very poor country and dangerous. You know, I mean, we got picked up at the airport and I mean, we had like armed guys meet us at baggage claim and they're in Manila, and they're like, go to the bathroom, get a snack. We're not stopping, you know, and these guys were like former retired cops, and they had a van and they picked us up. It was myself and another guy that owned the business and a few other people. And like, we didn't really ask for this, but like the head person who ran the business there was like, no, you need this, you know? And, so they were armed. They threw us in the van, threw our shit in the van, and they're like, we're not stopping. And we got like a 2-hour drive or hour and 45-minute drive. I mean, we drove through, you know, the slums of Manila, and oh my God, dude, it's scary, you know, and every single business that, you know, from a McDonald's to an office building to whatever, there's multiple guys with machine guns out front. I mean, you know, guarding the business. And every single one of our people who worked for us, I mean, the stories they had, they would have to take public transportation for 1 to 2 hours to get to their office. And then they'd work at night, right? Because they work US time. So it's night there. Half of the women had been sexually assaulted or worse. All of them had been robbed multiple times. And so what happens is there's these like public transportation, whether it's like a bus or like a little, there's different types of public transportation there, but whether it's a bus or like a subway car, whatever, guys come in with guns and just rob the whole car, you know, like give us all your shit. So your money, your jewelry, whatever, you know, and I mean, this is just normal. So that was one of the biggest things why they wanted to work for US companies from home, is the safety of the commute. Cause it's always at night, right? You know, so, and that was another thing, David, you mentioned, I mean, yeah, or go ahead.
On that real quick. So when you allow them to work from home, Terry, I mean, are you having to come up out of pocket for laptop and technology for them to be set up, or how does that work?
Yeah. So most of the virtual assistants on the sites that I mentioned, they'll if they've done some work before, they'll have that. But no, for 2 of the 3 people, like I pay for their internet to have upgraded faster internet. They have to have a backup generator because they lose power all the time in the Philippines. So they have backup generator. I pay for, you know, $15 a month for better internet. I've worked it in with 2 of them where upgraded cell phone and upgraded computer, where I paid for it up front, and then a certain amount was subtracted from their paycheck over time, you know, where they sort of paid me back. But a lot of people have this setup. But if you want to use that as a recruiting tool, it'll go a long way for sure.
Well, I think to wrap up that conversation, you should, for folks listening, save a life and hire a VA.
Yeah, no, for real. And the Filipino people are so freaking loyal. They're so loyal. Like, I mean, they you treat them fairly and you pay them on time and you just do what you say. I mean, they'll be loyal. The other thing is there's very, very little there's almost no language barrier to the Philippines at all. Like one of my VAs has no accent. One of them has a slight twang. My actual guy in Bangladesh has no accent. I mean, again, maybe like a slight twang, but nobody even knows that they're not local. All my people have always worked my time, or if it's not necessarily like the accounting guys don't have to work all my hours, but my other staff works our hours. They work like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central. But the accounting guys, I said, as long as you're at least available until noon Central, like for the morning, that's good enough for me. So we have some overlap if we're communicating and passing stuff back and forth. So the language barrier, it's not really an issue. The time barrier is not an issue at all. And you just have to set the expectation. And it is hard to hire a trained mentor. It's hard, but believe me, like when you find a good one, it's amazing.
So there's a lot of stuff that you've shared that's difficult and challenging that could prevent people from taking the step towards hiring a VA, building a team, taking the first step on that property, dealing with the eviction process, just dealing frankly with all the shit involved with being an entrepreneur, having a business. And I think a lot of people see the result of those efforts and they may think, oh, that person's got it made. And like, they're so lucky. Right. But they don't necessarily see under the hood of all the crap that you have to deal with every single day to get to the point to where you actually can have a team to offload some of the things that you don't want to do. And that can be tiring. That can be just incredibly draining. And that leads me to the final topic that we want to unpack today, which is how to invest all the time in the business to make it work while also balancing and investing in yourself and your health and your body to keep your mind right. All this stuff is connected. What's your general philosophy around how to balance building a business with also taking care of your health? I mean, particularly with your health scare, that's probably something that I know was serious for you in terms of your level of commitment to fitness and health, and probably even more so now after that. So just generally speaking, and we'll get detailed with, specific either, routines or, medications or supplements, whatever. But generally speaking, how do you view that in the business owner equation?
Man, this was my first passion, right? Just taking care of yourself. And it was to fix myself, even years ago with the food sensitivity stuff. And then 2019 with the second scare. But, it's funny, I've talked about this before, but in the news, over the years, especially in the last 3 years, there was some stuff that came out on Tom Brady and like how much money he spends, or LeBron, how much money they spend. And I get it, because I mean, their potential one more contract or one more year is astronomical money, right? But their career is short. Whereas as business owners, dude, your career could be 20, 30, 40 years, right? And so the amount of business owners that I see that are absolutely overweight, unhealthy, just live a lifestyle of absolute shit, it's unreal to me. And then there's guys that can get away with it. They don't look as bad as they should, but they're drinking, they're not sleeping, they're just eating crap, and they're like, oh, my doctor says I'm fine. It's just like, dude, like I see so many guys leaving money on the table. There's nothing in the world that takes more energy, physically, mentally, emotionally, than to build a business and deal with the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, losing money, making money, dealing with stressful lawsuits, dealing with shit employees. I mean, it is so stressful. So why would you not take a fraction of your income and invest it in optimizing yourself? Like, you guys both know what it's like every once in a while where you're in the fucking zone and you just, for whatever reason, you feel so good and so clear, and you're just, whatever it may be, like you're in a meeting and you crush it, or you're making prospecting calls and you crush it, or you have an idea and you execute it. I don't know what it may be for anybody. It may be different for anybody, but when you're in the zone, you get work done that an hour or two of work that equals 10 or 20 hours normally, right? Like, so why would you not invest in trying to make the zone happen every day or multiple times a day? Because as a business owner and entrepreneur, the payout, it could be more than like a Tom Brady and LeBron are the outliers, right?
Outliers. Yeah. But
if you're a business owner and you're making 7 figures, why are you not investing 50, 100 grand a year into your body, you should be, right? And even if you're making 250, you should be investing 25 grand a year. You should be investing 10% of your income into your optimal performance.
So that leads me to my next question. So if I'm not mistaken, I think, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I know Landon and I have concierge doctors, which is just, in my opinion, way better than your typical primary care physician that's at a hospital that you meet with for 3 minutes after the nurse, spent the majority of the time with you after they took you 20 minutes late. And that is, it's just like a shitty experience. So once I understood the concept of a concierge doctor, I was like, oh, word, I'm in. And for me, and it's, it's different throughout the country, but it's a wonderful experience. And it's $160 a month. And we meet quarterly, get access in between, do blood work quarterly, and really like try and dial everything in. But I'm thinking to myself, well, I think that's pretty good, but that's only $160 a month. So I guess for the scenarios of spending 10 grand, 15 grand, 25 grand, 100 grand, depending on what kind of level you're at, the hell are you spending the other money on? Like, give us some examples.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to have Terry talk to my wife about, my pickleball habits and shoes, paddle. That's all working towards my fitness, right? Terry? That goes towards my 10% spend on that, right?
that goes towards it. Look, some people might think that's a crazy number to throw out, but nobody would bat an eye if Tom Brady or LeBron spent 10% of their income on their health and optimization.
Probably expected.
Right. So, and David, so taking a step back, I get it. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that like I've always been in perfect balance and I've never been out of balance and I've never been stressed. And that's not true. But there's a couple things, so I'm going to answer your other question first, but there's a couple things in the process of building this business and going balls to the wall and going all in. There's a few things that I have never wavered on. I've never wavered on sleep. I don't give a shit. I'm going to get my 8 hours of sleep. Sometimes it's 7, but I'm going to do my best to get 8 hours of sleep. I'm not going to eat shitty food, and I'm not going to drink alcohol. If I drink, it's maybe once a month or twice a month at the most. And even then it's 1 or 2 drinks. And I'll go 3 to 6 months and not have a drink. Right. So very little alcohol, always protecting my sleep, always eating real food, never eating sugar. And if I go out, I'm going to do my best to eat meat, vegetables, some fruit, little starch, no sugar, nuts and seeds, things like that, real food to the best of my ability. So those are like my non-negotiables. Right. And that's like my main focus throughout building the business, through times of stress, through times of counterbalance, the things that I've been non-negotiable on. Okay, so what else are we going to invest in? Well, first of all, concierge medicine is fantastic, is great. It needs to be a functional medicine doctor, of course, who understands functional medicine lab testing, who can look at your hormones, who can look at inflammatory markers, who actually knows how to look at detailed thyroid stuff and detailed cardiovascular stuff and knows what peptides are and knows all these things that a normal doctor doesn't know, because a normal doctor is not going to run. I used to give clients a pretty detailed list of functional medicine lab testing that they need to run, and the doctor would fight them on it because the doctor didn't know what the hell it was. And if it was wrong, the doctor didn't know how to fix it. So why is he going to run it? Because he's going to look like he's going to look like a dipshit when it comes back all wrong, when he's told this guy for 10 years, you're fine, and so there's a huge rub there.
Real quick. Why do you think that is? Is that because, Western medicine, our doctors are trained insanely good education, right? But I feel like from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've worked with a lot more docs than I have in the medical capacity. I mean, a lot of them have gotten so siloed and so narrow on what they do. Is that the issue? I mean, why is this
We
not
want to put on
more
a
of thing?
tinfoil hats or what? Because I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
It's complicated, right? It's complicated. Now, if I get in a car accident or I have a liver tumor, take me to UNMC, take me to a traditional doctor, right? But if I want to study optimization, anti-aging, performing my best, feeling, looking, performing my best, don't take me to a fucking doctor, because they don't study that. They study disease, right? So doctors study disease. There's so many doctors who are very well-meaning, who fully believe with all their heart that they're doing the right thing and that they know the right shit, but they're studying the wrong shit. They don't have enough time to study health and optimization. They study disease. So functional medicine is saying, and it's a very small percentage of people who understand functional medicine. And again, 15 years ago, people thought I was absolutely nuts. I got into it with many people. Now, the shit that I was saying 15, 20 years ago, it's peer-reviewed published studies
now.
It's normal, right? So there's no medicine, there's very little money in functional medicine, and insurance doesn't cover functional medicine. So
because you're heading it off at the pass. You're being proactive as opposed to reactive, right?
Exactly. And
there's no money. There's no money in keeping you healthy.
There's no money in prevention. There's zero money in prevention, right? Why are stem cells illegal in the United States? Like I have tons of athletes who go to Panama, Colombia, other countries and get stem cells, and they cure shit because it eliminates a surgery or a disease that you have for the rest of your life.
Or prescription,
exactly. So
all the dollars,
and and there's more to it, right? So in the defense of the physicians, even if they learn the shit that I know, 95% of their clients aren't going to do it anyway. Their clients aren't going to stop eating McDonald's. They're not going to stop smoking cigarettes. They're not going to stop drinking. They're not going to stop eating sugar. So does it really matter if the doctor tells them to do that? So it goes both ways. It's give and take. But a huge part of it has to do with insurance, and it has to do with financial profit on the back end. I mean, giving somebody a pill or a medication for the rest of their life is very profitable. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's not too many companies interested in doing research to stop that because it's not profitable, right? So, I mean, that's a big part of it. The other part of it is that people are freaking lazy and they're not going to be proactive and preventative in the first place. So, but I can talk, David, more about your question. I mean, feel free to ask whatever you guys want to know, but I can talk more about the other stuff that I would recommend where to invest.
So let's go down that path. And everyone's situation is going to be obviously different to a certain degree, but there are probably staples and foundational things that everyone can be doing, such as what you already listed off: limiting alcohol, eating real food, remaining active and focusing on sleep. But the next level above, like, what's the next level to that foundation to where it doesn't necessarily get super unique to the person? It's like, hey, most people should consider doing these 3 things as well, or these 4 things. Like, what are those?
Okay, so I would say
real food, number 1, right?
Yeah. So if you're saying on top of that, though,
on top of that.
So let me just walk you through like the 7 or 8 things that need to be looked at. Okay, and I'll start from the beginning. So real food, number 1, you need to look at what you put in your body. Movement is very important, but it's actually probably not as important as some of this other stuff. You got to move, you got to walk, you got to at least walk, if not strength train and work out, right? But people can lose 100 pounds without really working out, which is walking. So, you got to eat real food. You got to have some sort of movement. I'm a big believer in strength training, intense strength training, at least 3 to 4 times a week. You got to dial in your sleep. One of my mentors back in the day said, it's give a person 8 hours of sleep a night. It's really hard to kill them. Ruin their sleep. It's really hard to keep them alive. And so when you look at cancer, heart disease, all these things, sleep is a big piece of that. So then we have to look at gut health. Our gut is there's more neurotransmitter receptor sites in your gut than there is your brain. So ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, all these different diseases or ailments, a lot of it starts in the gut. We got to look at hormones. We got to look at optimizing hormones. And this is where I would spend money. Okay. And we'll get into this next. But optimizing hormones, making sure your testosterone is optimal, your thyroid hormones are optimal, your other sex hormones are optimal, your cortisol is low enough where it should be, making sure your estrogen, if you're a guy, is not too high. You want to look at DHEA, pregnenolone, all these different hormones, they need to be optimal. You want to look at inflammatory markers. We need to keep inflammation low as possible. We know that inflammation is the number one thing that creates disease and is a killer. It's a silent killer. We then have to look at some things that people are not as familiar with. I would say toxicity. So a huge issue is the toxins we bring in, just from simple stuff like plastics and from toxic man-made seed oils and food and toxic beauty products. And I mean, there's tons of shit down this road, but toxicity is a huge deal that's taxing our body. It's taxing our organs of elimination. And in turn, a lot of people, it's caused them to have hormone dysregulation because their body is in a chronic stress state trying to get rid of toxins and deal with toxins. And so their mental clarity is messed up. And then their hormones become messed up, and then they sleep like shit. So toxicity is a big piece. And then, of course, managing stress. Managing stress is a huge one. So whether you're playing pickleball or you have some sort of good outlet, to manage your stress, that's extremely important. But one of the biggest stressors that doesn't get looked at is chronic toxicity. So if you're living in a house with mold or you have some sort of chronic toxicity around you, that's going to just throw a shitstorm at your entire system, your immune system, your hormonal endocrine system, everything. So those are kind of like the big pieces and the things that I used to look at when I work with people.
There's a lot there.
There is a lot there as far as, and again, everyone's situation is different, whether it's particular supplements, peptides, testosterone, dosage of all those things. I'm most interested in, just selfishly, learning a little bit more about like the staple peptides to integrate. So we don't need to necessarily talk through like doses or anything like that, but just like, hey, these are the 3 main peptides you should consider, and here's the reason why. What do those look like?
Okay, so let's take one step back if we can. Yep. So before I would get to peptides, I would first make sure that for males, let's just say predominantly it's business with the boys, right? I mean, I know there's some female.
We got some female guests on the horizon.
We love you. Okay. We love you, ladies.
Yes, nothing, but or if you're a woman and your husband or significant others having some energy issues, the first thing we have to look at is the functional medicine lab testing with hormone profile and with inflammatory markers, and we have to correct that any way we can. So we need to optimize testosterone. We need to optimize thyroid, and then we need to optimize growth hormone. Those are the first 3 things that I would invest in optimizing, whether that's through drugs, supplements, or peptides. Okay. So first we got to start there. Once we're eating a good diet, we're working out, and maybe we've optimized testosterone, thyroid, and growth hormone. And for example, most guys probably need to optimize testosterone. Maybe your thyroid's fine. Perfect. Okay. But you need to make sure it's fine. And you do not need to just look at TSH. If your doctor's just running fucking TSH, then you need a new doctor. You need to look at T3, T4, thyroid antibodies, conversion. You need to look at a bunch more than just TSH. Okay. Then with, growth hormone, your growth hormone might be fine. That's okay too. So then let's move on. Okay. So if those 3 things are in check, then let's move on to peptides. And so peptides could be used for a variety of things. Probably my 2 favorite peptides are thymosin alpha 1, which is for anyone who has any sort of autoimmune or inflammatory type issues like myself. It has a very calming, anti-inflammatory, sort of regulates, calms the immune system, and has an anti-inflammatory effect. So thymosin alpha 1. Second would be probably tesamorelin and ipamorelin, which are growth hormone secretagogues, which can help you optimize your growth hormone. Okay. So for somebody whose growth hormone is fine, who doesn't have an actual deficiency, tesamorelin, ipamorelin, there's a couple other ones, probably new ones that are going to be coming out. You can take these and they have the ability to essentially increase your natural production of growth hormone without sort of like a negative feedback loop. So the problem is when you take testosterone, it's going to suppress your natural production. It's going to suppress other hormones or other things in your body like LH or FSH. It's going to mess those up because your body says, oh shit, I have enough testosterone. I don't need to make any. And so then you can have some issues. So if you go on testosterone optimization or replacement, you need to make sure you're checking your labs in the future to see what things look like. Whereas peptides with like testosterone or ipamorelin that are going to increase your or optimize your growth hormone, you generally take those 5 out of 7 days. You can go on them for 8 to 12 weeks and then take a little break, but it's not going to bring when you stop taking it, you're essentially, you shouldn't go below baseline. Whereas if you stop taking testosterone, you're going to go below baseline. So that's a big difference there. So those would probably be my top choices. The next one more peptide, if I could share, would be TB500, thymosin beta, or is it the thymosin beta 400 or 500? You can look it up, but that is very anti-inflammatory, and so is BPC 157. Those two are really good for injuries. So let's just say you have a surgery, or you get tendonitis, or you have some sort of issue, that's inflammation, or that's an actual injury. TB500 and BPC 157 would be great for specific injuries. And then the last one we'll talk about, and some of the guys will thank me for this one. This is a sexual peptide, which is kind of interesting. And it's actually the only peptide that's FDA approved, and it's called, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but I'll remember it 1 second. But it's you
got everyone
PT,
on edge listening right now. You got them excited.
That's
and then
it,
you
guys.
Took it away.
That's it. We'll
see you on the next
time.
episode.
Episode's over. Okay. So PT 141 is a sexual peptide, and it's actually FDA approved for women to drastically increase sexual desire. So it's a little bit like the Viagra for women, but it's different because it actually affects brain chemicals and increases desire for sexual connection, which a lot of women have issues probably more like maybe on the emotional side or the neurotransmitter side. And so it's really amazing. Guys can take it too, but that's another peptide that's pretty interesting. It's made for women, but men can take it, and it acts on neurotransmitters and increases like sexual desire and sexual experience. So that's a fun one for everybody. So those are some interesting peptides to share. The last thing I'll share. Okay, I said that like 4 times. The last thing.
Not holding you to it. It's okay.
So one more thing for guys, even over the age of 35, right? So as you age, your blood flow and just your risk for cardiac issues is going to go up. And so there is a lot of new research in the functional medicine world that like low dose Cialis, which obviously is for like erectile dysfunction, but a low dose Cialis around 5 milligrams a day is actually extremely healthy for heart health, for vascularity. It increases nitric oxide. It actually can help you in the gym. It can help you all around, guard against heart disease and many other things. That's
there you
another
go, fellas. There's your takeaway from the pod today.
That's right. So those are things that functional medicine doctors are big on, that are those are all things that, like, if I was coaching a guy 35 to 65 years old, those are all things that I would make sure that we're looking at and his doctor is addressing.
Before we start wrapping up, and I love how we've been organized, but like equally kind of all over the place. Like we've covered a lot, but we've done a lot, gone through it in a lot of detail. But like my initial reaction is, hey, that sounds great if you have the capital and you have, frankly, the interest, because what we didn't talk about is like whether it's testosterone, like Cialis as an example, you pop a pill, right?
Right.
Peptides, testosterone, like those are needles, right?
Right.
So how do you, what would your advice be for someone who does want to optimize that, let's say, does have the capital to invest in these various peptides and whatever else? how do you get them over the hump of just integrating that into their routine? Like that's a lot.
It's a challenge. Yeah. I just wanted to brain dump and just share a ton of shit for the person who's interested. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But for the person who's not interested, you might have to take a few of those and just play with them. Right. So
what got me over the hump was just feeling like shit all the time and being tired of it.
yeah,
Like, I think any of you fellas out there, again, not to shove the ladies out of the way, but I mean, if there's any of you guys out there that, I mean, I felt like shit, Terry. I don't remember when I talked to you, it was a year or longer, and you just know when something is off, right? You've had your optimal performance, and now all of a sudden you're here, and there's no real resonating reason why. Like, I had went to multiple doctors. I had done sleep study. I had had my thyroid tested, like all siloed in individual places, right? Nobody took the holistic look. Yeah, I mean, but I remember walking in to the first doctor and, talking about testosterone. This was just kind of when this stuff was starting. And it was like, well, can you still perform in the bedroom? And it was like, well, yeah, that's not an issue. It's like, no, your testosterone's fine then. And, it hadn't even been tested, right? Like, until we had the conversation, you sent me to your contact, and it was like, yeah. And then my life, boom, it was a life change.
And you were probably full of shit answering that question because you wanted to sound cool to the doctor. So if you were just honest,
you're like, Doc, have you seen my OnlyFans? Like,
right. You think the podcast game is strong? I mean, come on.
Well, Landon, I mean, that was years ago too that we spoke. I mean, I don't even know, 5+ years ago, maybe.
It's been, I mean, it was before my daughter was born. She's 11 now. So,
okay. So over 10 years. So here's the thing. Back then it was impossible for me to get docs to even fucking listen. Like, and Dr. Biscup was my guy who thank God I found him, and, we became great friends, and I've sent people to him, but it was such a struggle. I mean, your story is so common. And I think, David, the answer is like, if you got to be ready, you got to experience enough pain before you're ready to take the next step and do what you got to do. But for the guy who feels pretty good, then, okay, let's work on sleep and eating and working out. Let's start there. Let's get to the next level. Then let's get some functional medicine lab testing. And then it's a progression, right? And I always tell people, like, here's where you are. I'm way over here. I'm crazy. But let's just take a few steps in the right direction, and we'll go at your pace, and we'll go as slow or as fast as you want, right?
What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to feel a little bit better? Okay.
Right. And just so guys know, too, for testosterone, I mean, one option is, I mean, there's compounded cream. It's not maybe the best, but I mean, actually scrotal, rubbing on your nuts, like scrotal testosterone cream has actually been shown to be pretty damn good. And you do it daily or twice a day. And so it actually gives you a more of a level baseline. So for a guy who's really avoidant of shots or whatever, that is an option there. And then, if you don't want shots, then peptides aren't really an option, but everything else could be.
Well, to bring this full circle, it's not like you came out of the gates and, on day one, you had 200 doors and a large team, both US based and overseas. You just evolved over time. And I think that's very similar in the health side. It's like, hey, it's lay one brick, get that settled, lay another brick, get that settled. And before you know it, you've totally transformed your life, or in real estate, you've totally transformed your business, but just lay one brick at a time, focus on doing it perfectly, or as close to perfect as possible.
You'll look back and wonder how the hell you even did it before, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Right. It's just taking action. You got to just take action, and it's like, for me and for a lot of people, the massive action I took in real estate, it truly was like, I experienced enough pain and I was scared enough, and I realized that time's ticking. What are you doing? Just go, and I took massive action like I've never taken before. And also the same thing happened really with health scares, right? For me. But I mean, it's just, it's just one of those things where you just consistent action over time is an amazing thing. And one of the quotes that I was told once, actually from a Northwestern guy, and it's, the difference between an amateur and a professional is a professional just does a handful of things well every single day, no matter how they feel. Right. Like everybody thinks like, oh man, like the difference between me and this person's so huge, but it's not. Like the difference is just a handful of things that you do pretty well every day, no matter how you feel, and that's
It's
the
Kobe
same
Bryant
business.
methodology, right? I'm going to get in 30 more minutes at the gym. I'm going to get in, earlier than everybody. And that 30 minutes, every day compounds over time.
For sure. Kobe Bryant's a unique individual.
Beast.
I got to meet Kobe Bryant, and Kyle Korver was the guy that I've been around the most, who's NBA All-Star, and I joke around, because Kyle's like the nicest guy in the world. His dad's a pastor, his grandpa's a pastor. He's like a strong Christian, like about as clean cut, good of a guy as you'll ever meet in your life. But he'll race you to the car and he'll fucking trip you. Like he has a killer in him that is like. There's levels of like killer in people, and it's like he has a competitiveness and an absolute will to win and hate to lose like you've never seen, and I think a lot of guys have that in business too, but it's just taking a little bit of action every single day, just making progress.
Let's end it on that. I think that's great sentiment, and it's very accurate. But dude, we've spent an hour and a half or so on this, and like I said, we were all over the place in a good way, but also organized and went in depth as well. So just like in the last episode, dude, we appreciate your time, and looking forward to when I get out to Nebraska here shortly. I'd say grab a beer, but you don't drink as much. Landon doesn't drink, and
we'll shoot up some peptides together. We'll shoot
a little peptide party, just like they do the Botox parties. We'll do it. We'll do a peptide party.
Right.
Better than the scrotal rubbing party. That's
exactly. You got.
On that note, let's end right there.
Yeah.
Peace, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the opportunity, guys. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Likewise. Take care.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life.